Tonight on The Wrap, the life and legacy of a civil rights icon. Jesse Jackson was America's most influential black leader between Martin Luther King's March for Freedom in the 1960s and Barack Obama's election to the White House. His language had a spiritual force that spoke to everyone who needed hope in their lives. Tonight, we'll look at how he changed America and the world. Also ahead, what a Reform UK government could look like. Nigel Farage unveils his top team, along with a promise to rip up the Equality Act. Russia is back in international sport. Despite the doping scandals and the invasion of Ukraine, the Russian team is going to the Paralympics. Could the Olympics and the World Cup be next? And lagging behind girls at school in every metric, from primary education to GCSEs, why the UK's lost boys are in crisis. We discuss the day's biggest stories with Jack Elsom and Jenny Kleeman. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including growing pressure on the former Prince Andrew. Good evening. Jesse Jackson cried the night that Barack Obama was elected president. Today, Obama paid tribute. In his 2 historic runs for president, he laid the foundations for my own campaign, the highest office in the land, he said. We stood on his shoulders. Jack and Jenny, your thoughts on the passing of Reverend Jesse Jackson?
I would say that today, more than ever, we need a message of hope and optimism, and it's particularly poignant that he's no longer with us.
I've just been watching some of the clips today, and you look back, what an impressive person. You look at today's current crop, and it's easy to say, you know, the last lot are always better than the current crop of politicians, but, I mean, what an orator, what an inspirer, you know, someone that can really sort of motivate a crowd.
Yeah, and that tagline, keep hope alive. Well, our correspondent David Blevins looks back now on the life and legacy of Reverend Jesse Jackson.
We must never surrender. We must go forward.
Articulate, impassioned, electrifying. He was the man who opened the door, the first African-American to run for president of the United States.
Let's be bigger and better as a nation.
His campaign speeches emboldening the marginalised.
Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it. It gets dark sometimes, but the morning comes. Don't you surrender. We must never surrender. America will get better and better. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
The son of a single mother from Greenville, North Carolina, he grew up in a deeply segregated southern community and became a protege of Martin Luther King Jr., witnessing his assassination firsthand and inheriting his mantle.
Jesse Jackson changed American politics. Jesse Jackson changed the civil rights movement. He was a consequential and transformative figure.
It was a lifetime of organising. He became a voice for the voiceless. Black Americans, women, the gay community and the poor.
This is America, the richest nation in the history of the world.
Jesse Jackson ran for president twice, changing US politics forever. He didn't win, but paved the way for the first black man who did.
Change has come to America.
It was in many ways the fulfillment of his hopes. They did have a complicated relationship. Jackson, a prophetic voice of challenge. Obama, more focused on building a coalition for change. In a statement, President Obama said his wife Michelle got her first glimpse of political organising at the Jacksons' kitchen table, adding, "We stood on his shoulders." President Trump posted numerous photos of him with Reverend Jesse Jackson on his social media site and wrote, "Despite the fact that I am falsely and consistently called a racist by the scoundrels and lunatics on the radical left, Democrats all, it was always my pleasure to help Jesse along the way." He emerged from the long shadow of Martin Luther King Jr., their combined legacy having carved a path for generations.
people got to realize that they were worth more because of the speeches that he gave.
It showed that it doesn't matter what our skin color is or where we're from, that we all have innate talents that we were given and that we are all the same.
We can dream as much as we want and we can achieve what we dream of. Yeah.
One of the last towering figures of the struggle for equality has gone. And for Jesse Jackson, there can only be one epitaph.
Keep hope alive.
Well, David Blevins is going to be joining us. Welcome to you, David. But first, let's hear from our guests. And Jenny, just looking at the quote from the family, the statement that they put out today, in which they say, our father was a servant leader, not only to our family, but to the oppressed, the voiceless and the overlooked around the world.
Yes, he very much was a civil rights campaigner, and not just for black rights, for rights across the board. A hero to many people, and just an extraordinary orator. Hearing those clips, keep hope alive, America can get better, will be better, all of these things that you just don't hear people delivering messages like this. And there is a sense that he was one of the last remaining figures of that era, not just the era of civil rights, but of that kind of rousing, inspiring oratory that inspired so many people to get behind him and believe in change, believe in the possibility of something else.
And steeped in that spirituality, because he was an ordained preacher.
Yeah, he was, Reverend Jackson. You know, we study politicians up close, and it is so rare to get someone who can combine electric oratory skills with a driving sense of conviction, but also sort of the meticulous hard yards you put into organising. You know, forget at his heart, he was an organiser, you know, and so it's not just, you know, speaking to a crowd, but behind the scenes, getting out millions of black Americans to register to vote. You know, that will be his legacy. And, you know, far better people can articulate, you know, just how much of a titanic figure he was to the civil rights movements than me. But it does seem that, you know, his legacy will, you know, be very long-lasting.
And he had a resonance around the world, David, if I can bring you in, particularly in Northern Ireland, where he was the role model for the civil rights movement there.
Yes, his influence extended far beyond America in terms of diplomacy. After his political career here, he negotiated the safe release of American hostages in places like Syria and Iraq and Cuba. I suppose having been the first African-American to run for the White House gave him a global platform. But as you say, he was already very well known around the world because Jesse Jackson framed civil rights as human rights and connected with similar movements in places like Africa and South America and Europe, most notably in Northern Ireland. He often compared the Catholic civil rights protests in Northern Ireland with the African-American civil rights protests here on this side of the Atlantic. In fact, those in Northern Ireland who were protesting about housing, employment and voting discrimination often took their lead from the civil rights movement in America. Their banners, their songs, their refusal to be silent. But I think it's also worth stressing that Jesse Jackson always advocated for peaceful dialogue. He endorsed the peace talks in Northern Ireland. He encouraged the Americans to become involved. And of course, they did when Bill Clinton was in the White House. And all of that, as we know, culminated in the Good Friday Agreement.
Indeed. David, thank you very much for the moment. Well, in 2013, after the death of Nelson Mandela, I spoke to Jesse Jackson here on Sky News. I mean, of course, we have to remember that before he became president, he was known as a freedom fighter, and some even labelled him as a terrorist. Did that label sit uncomfortably with you?
Well, it's uncomfortable because the fact is the South African government was a state of terrorism, state-sponsored terrorism. And he was on America's terrorist list until like 3 years ago. But to leave from the pits of being considered a terrorist to the most moral, authoritative person in the world was quite a journey. But you had the preparation as a lawyer, you had the spirit, and he would not, as I say, even let suffering and persecution stand in the way. And important, he began to gain strength from his status as a prisoner. He could have gotten that much earlier. He chose jail over freedom without dignity and freedom without political change. And now what we must be very aware of, even as we extol his virtues this morning and tonight, whatever it is, tomorrow or tonight, is that the political apartheid is over, but the economic apartheid is real. About 10% of the people still own about 80% of the land, and about 80% of the people own about 10% of the land. There's abounding poverty yet. So racism and poverty and violence are still very much a part of that society, but people are at least free to fight that fight.
So what was it like to interview Jesse Jackson?
Well, really interesting, because the reason he wasn't clear about what time it was, the time of day, is because he was on his way to Heathrow Airport, and I managed, through his chief of staff, to persuade him to stop off at the Sky Studios and to give us this interview on Nelson Mandela's death. But a remarkable individual, and because I did get to know his chief of staff, called upon him several times, and I mean, I wouldn't say we had a friendship, but I was able to have a relationship with him, and he did a tribute video for my husband's 50th birthday.
Wow.
I'd arranged for him to go to a dinner with my husband and sister and some friends in Lagos in Nigeria, and they called me from the dinner and said, "Oh, we're missing you, Gillian," and I was at work at Sky News on the air, and they were having fun without me. But
so how are you feeling today, then?
I was really sad. When I heard the news, I was at the gym this morning, and I just stopped everything that I was doing and went home. Just really, really sad, because just... And that's a picture there of me and my daughter with him. He came to give a talk at my daughter's school. Can you imagine? Jesse Jackson was the speaker at her school. I mean, it was very emotional today, actually.
She definitely won show and tell that day.
Oh, yes,
you know.
yes, big time, big time.
He must have been, as well as being a very impressive person, he was a very generous person.
Very generous with his time, and you felt as if you were the most important person in his life at that moment in time. Obviously he wasn't, but I mean, that's the way he made you feel, and everything you had to say was really important. And very humble, very, very humble, very approachable. Anybody could go up to him and speak with him, and just a wonderful human being.
And still, in 2013, so what, he would have been 75, and still even getting into old age, incredibly articulate. You know, he still had that sort of sense of almost oratory that he commanded back in the 60s and 70s.
No, absolutely, and that power. When he spoke, that, you know, you stopped in your tracks and you listened, because you knew the experiences that he'd been with Martin Luther King when he was assassinated, and just the history of what he knew and what he'd experienced. You know, you felt it in every word he spoke.
But also, he was just so charismatic. We were talking about this just before we came on air, that you just don't see people who have that combination of skills, really. It's very, very rare.
Yeah, yeah. A time gone by. Yeah, very sad day, very sad day. And Jesse Jackson features on the front of a few of tomorrow's front pages, including The Guardian, which has former President Barack Obama's words: "We stood on his shoulders." He also features on the front of the Financial Times, which says he went from watching Martin Luther King Jr. being assassinated, as I was saying, to watching the US elect its first black president. And we saw those tears that he couldn't contain on that day when Barack Obama was confirmed as the first black president of the United States. And at home, we were crying with him because it was such an emotional day. And he saw everything that he'd worked for come to fruition in Barack Obama. So the emotion was very, very high, as it is today, to be honest. Next, let's talk about these 5 people. Nigel Farage has unveiled what could be Britain's next government. Robert Jenrick would be in charge of the economy. Richard Tice gets the business brief. Zia Yusuf, Home Secretary. And new girl Suella Braverman completes the top team as Secretary of State for Education and Equalities. She's already said that she would rip up the Equalities Act. Well, Lucy's here, our politics correspondent, and we'll come to you in a second. But let's turn to our guests first of all. Your thoughts on today's news conference and what it revealed?
What it revealed? Well, it reveals that Reform want to set themselves up as the real opposition, not just Nigel Farage's one-man band. I was quite interested to see that everyone seemingly being so happy about Richard Tice being happy that Robert Jenrick was going to be Chancellor, even though that job was supposed to be his. Richard Tice appears to have almost all the other jobs in terms of energy, business, trade. He said also housing and also the deputy. I'm interested to see that they don't have a health spokesperson, a health shadow cabinet person. What does that say about them, that they haven't decided that that's an interesting job? But yes, there's lots to talk about there, and particularly what do you do with Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick when it comes to their record in the Home Office, you know, in terms of their record on immigration. They were the people who arguably created a lot of the problems that Reform is rallying against.
Interesting that he's calling it a shadow cabinet. It's really just a set of spokespeople, isn't it, really?
Yes, and not even enough to cover all the briefs.
Indeed. Well, our own Alex Rogers got a question to Nigel Farage. Let's take a listen.
Nigel, Kemi Badenoch said recently that defections to your party had allowed her to get rid of drama queens who create problems. How are you going to ensure that Reform won't fall prey to the same psychodrama that plagued the Tories?
Very simple. If people mess about, behave badly, and are disloyal, they won't be here very long. We're not going to put up with it.
Oh, he's not going to have it. Very strict in terms of discipline. There'll be no psychodramas. They'll be out, Jack.
Well, yeah, I mean, Reform is an absolute monarchy and Nigel Farage is the king. And if you don't bend the knee to Nigel Farage, then you'll quickly be out in your ear, as many people have seen. You know, listen, I did think today, clearly, Robert Jenrick, Suella Braverman, the two Tory defectors, most recent Tory defectors, are probably the most famous faces now in the Reform fold in terms of MPs. Doesn't really seem to be round pegs in round holes. I mean, both of them have risen to notoriety, mainly on punching bruises on immigration, policing and crime. Those are the very areas that Nigel Farage does not want them to be in, because that was the roles they held in the last Conservative government, which he accuses of wrecking the country. And so he's put Robert Jenrick into the Shadow Chancellor, in inverted quotes, role. Has he ever talked about the economy at great length before? I don't think so. Suella Braverman, Education Secretary. Has she taken much interest in the education brief? I'd probably say not. Today she went on about trans children in classrooms and ripping up the Equality Act, which is fine. But, you know, education is a lot more than that. And I don't think that either of them have really had much of a track record when it comes to these things. And so the next few months and years for these two in particular is really going to be putting in the hard yards to get to grips with their briefs, I'd say.
Should we just show you the latest polls? Reform with a 10-point lead over Labour. Lucy, how realistic is it for them to be, you know, publicising a shadow cabinet? Are they likely to get into power?
Well, the truth is, I suppose, you know, many say, when you look at those numbers, if there's a general election tomorrow, Reform could get into government, whether that's a stretch or not. But when you take it from the polls... And actually, you know, Labour is treating them as opposition. Keir Starmer has said that quite openly before. You've got, you know, local elections coming up, Reform looking to do very well there, especially now that you've got those local elections that were delayed and now going to go ahead. And to be honest, that was handed on a plate to Nigel Farage yesterday, wasn't it? And I know it's, you know, it's recess. We did see Keir Starmer out yesterday. That story about social media kind of got overshadowed very quickly, didn't it? So it's been a good week for Nigel Farage. He's out today. I think, yeah, you have to take the polls as they are. If an election was held tomorrow, they may well be in with a chance. This was him saying, we are serious, we are slick, we are more than just rhetoric, and we are going to start putting meat on the bones of our policy now. Actually, a lot of what was said, I don't know if you agree, but a lot of what was said we've heard before. We've actually heard Suella Braverman say about the Equalities Act. We've heard Richard Tice talk about net zero. So it'll be interesting to see what more they come out and say. But effectively for Nigel Farage, he wanted to say to people today, this isn't just about me. He said, if I was hit by a bus tomorrow, we would still have an identity. And I think that's the message they might struggle to get across to people, actually.
In terms of Suella Braverman suggesting that she'd get rid of the Equalities Act, that we have heard before, but today there's some pushback from the unions saying that, you know, Reform seem as if they are against any sort of equality in terms of employment.
I mean, she also said she would get rid of the Equalities Department, and there isn't one. So you do have to see this as part of her larger war on woke. She's basically standing up for what she's always stood up for. And as you say, these are things that we've heard before. This whole alarm clock Britain thing that Robert Jenrick was talking about today is actually something that Nick Clegg coined that phrase in 2011. So none of this is particularly new. And I guess Reform is not trying to look particularly new because they have, you know, people who were has-beens, who are has-beens from the Tory party now on their shadow front bench. They want to call it the shadow front bench.
I think that point on education as well, Jack mentioned it, it is interesting because when you speak to MPs, overwhelmingly, they talk about SEND. In their inboxes all the time, they're overwhelmed by parents coming in talking about SEND, and there was no mention of that today. And I think Reform will find that they are going to have to talk about those, not just kind of culture wars, classroom issues.
What about health? I mean, that's really... You say if there's a general election tomorrow, could people vote for a party that doesn't have a coherent and obvious policy for the future of the NHS?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Sorry. I mean, like, the two things you hear on a Wednesday lunchtime at PMQs almost every week is Sir Keir Starmer turning to Reform and going, you're a Putin puppet and you want to privatise the NHS. He could have stood up today, rolled out a shadow defence secretary and a shadow health secretary, tried to demolish those claims and said, I won't privatise the NHS and I will, you know, stick it to Putin every which way. I think that is going to be the next step. They need to basically fill those roles and claim some serious credibility on those patches.
OK. Just want to take you to our sports correspondent now, Rob Harris, for some breaking news regarding Real Madrid. Rob.
Yes, Real Madrid's Vinicius tonight accusing an opponent at Benfica of racially abusing him while playing their Champions League match in Portugal. The game was stopped for about 10 minutes, the referee indicating that he'd activated the anti-racism protocols, which leads to games being stopped and eventually warnings in the stadium. Vinicius had just scored for Real Madrid in the first leg of this knockout round match, and there was clearly something that had gone on because then the Brazilian went over to the referee to say that an opponent had used the word monkey. This was picked up on the broadcast feed, and then there was a lot of discussions on the side of the pitch. The referee did not appear to hear anything himself, but did speak to the players. Vinicius himself had warned about facing racism in the past, particularly in Spain, Valencia a few years ago, and had said that he would be prepared to walk off a match if he faced abuse. And tonight in the Champions League, it's one of the biggest competitions in the world, one of the most high-profile players saying that an opponent did racially abuse him. We'll wait to hear more from Vinicius and indeed from UEFA, the competition organisers.
So Rob, what does that mean in terms of the competition now and the positions? I mean, will the game be replayed?
Well, the match was finished and the first leg did end 1-0, so they are due to go back to Madrid to play the second leg. But there can be sanctions, there can be a ban for the player if he's found guilty of the racial abuse of Vinicius. You can get a very lengthy ban for that, and indeed, you know, football often talks about sending out a message and imposing those bans to hopefully try to stamp out the scourge of racism. But how often are we still talking about this in football in 2016? A player, a high-profile player like Vinicius, who's spoken out against racist abuse he's faced in matches here, alleging in a high-profile match in a Champions League game that he has been racially abused by opponent after scoring.
OK, Rob, for the minute, thank you. Just get the reaction of Jenny and Jack. Your initial thoughts? I mean, I just personally can't believe that this is still happening.
Totally shocking. And, you know, it's bad enough when fans do it, but for another player to say it to someone on the pitch is just absolutely, like, unfathomable. And, you know, Vinicius Jr., one of the best players, like, in the world for Real Madrid. And it seems extraordinary that, like you said, after everything at FIFA, UEFA, FA, all of the different organisations throughout the world have different campaigns, you know, to stand up to racism on the pitch. This is still happening in 2026. It just beggars belief. And you'd hope that this player, whoever it is, gets caught, gets fined, gets banned, whatever, have the book thrown at them.
But it seems as if, you know, that the sanctions aren't enough because they've been there in the past and it still hasn't prevented this sort of behaviour.
No, and obviously it seems like they're taking it very seriously, but we need to make sure that this behaviour stops. And if you've got, as you say, an opponent saying this in a Champions League game against such a high-profile player who's just scored a goal, you do have to think, you know, people know that you're people, you know that you're not supposed to be racist. You know that you're not supposed to say things like that. The fact that people are still doing it, it does beg a belief. And you know, what sanction would be appropriate? And you know, it should be career-ending if he's found to have actually used this phrase.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that's right, Jack?
I think so. Yeah, I think like if someone's racist to someone on the pitch like that, you should probably ban them for life. I mean, like, I don't see. Clearly, things get said in the heat of a moment on a football match when, like, pressures are running high. But I don't think you can be.
Nobody becomes racist in the heat of the moment.
I was under so much pressure, I became a racist.
This is what I'm saying. You know, you might call someone an idiot or a lunatic or swear at them. Racism is a totally different ballgame, right? You know, so I think that if that happened, then that defence just totally doesn't wash, and you just end up, I think, just getting rid of them. Yeah.
Well, here we know that the police and Ofcom, they've joined forces to tackle online abuse. I mean, what are the agencies that need to clamp down on this? I mean, is it from within the sporting world?
Is it from within the sport? You know, this is the point. So that it's about people's attitudes, as you say. If it's someone under pressure saying something, people need to be aware, you know, not just that they might get in trouble, but they just need to not have these attitudes. And that comes from, it's a societal thing. It's to do with how your parents bring you up. It's to do with what's acceptable banter at school, what your friends call you out on when you make jokes. It's not just about the rules and sanctions, but it's about having a zero tolerance for this kind of language and this kind of attitude across the board from the beginning.
The clubs themselves, I mean, Benfica, I mean, like, if this case is proven against this player who has said this, then, you know, I'm sure there's a clause in their contract where you bring the club into such disrepute, you can just terminate it and get rid of them. You know, it should be on the clubs to sort of hold the standards here, I think.
But if it is a societal problem, it doesn't begin within sport, it begins way before that. So what is it that we are not doing, that we need to start doing now? And is that from the nurseries, primary schools, secondary schools? Do we have to go that far back?
I presume so. You know, all of these things start in education, don't they? And just sort of like worldly experience, and the fact that it's still happening, just it is so shocking. And then, like, it does. I mean, in most of these cases now you've seen, a lot of them are in Europe rather than Britain. So I don't know whether it's European. I've no idea. But clearly, it's just a huge issue at the moment, which hasn't been rooted out, despite all of the campaigns which have been running for a few years now.
Yeah, quite depressing. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll take a first look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Stay with us.
the best thing about being a Sky News journalist.
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
You are watching The Wrap, and it's time now to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Well, The Eye reports that another police force is looking into potential links between the former Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein, as Essex police assess information about private flights into and out of Stansted Airport. That story is also on the front of The Sun, following the release of information published in the Epstein files. And it also makes the front page of The Mail, which says the pressure is piling on Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. The Express leads on the UK's unemployment rate, which has increased again to the highest level in nearly 5 years, according to official figures. The Telegraph reports that Rachel Reeves is resisting pressure from military chiefs to spend billions more on defence. The Guardian leads on new data saying that 1 in 9 homes built between 2022 and 24 were constructed in areas now deemed to be at risk of flooding. The Financial Times reports that the government has shelved plans on a project to streamline international trade, despite spending £110 million on the scheme. The Metro has an exclusive with Russian dissident Roman Dobrokov, who says he fears for his life after being named as a target during a trial of spies convicted of working for Vladimir Putin. And The Star leads on comments from celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay, saying his tough upbringing has made him a better father. Well, Jack and Jenny are going to take us through the newspapers now. Shall we start with the Sun front page and the headline there, Cops in Andy sex probe. That's your paper, Jack.
Yes, well, it looks like 7 police forces across the UK now are now assessing various claims in the Epstein files. Obviously, there's been 3 million pages of evidence which has been released by the Department of Justice in the US. And so it's so widespread, some of these claims, that it's dragged in many police forces. But specifically tonight, what we're hearing is that Essex police have opened this investigation into the allegations really made by Gordon Brown last week in the New Statesman, where he suggested that Epstein's private plane was flown into Stansted, potentially to sex traffic victims.
We should just say that they haven't opened.
They're assessing. They're assessing
the information.
They're assessing the information exactly, which implicates Andrew in this as well, because one of the allegations is that a victim potentially, was on one of these 90 or so flights that came in during this period. I don't see a way in which this ends without Andrew having to testify in front of the US Congress, because the pressure now is building so much. All we've heard so far is radio silence from Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. We've had some words from Charles and William in which they're deeply concerned, but I think now there is need for more than that. I think that he's going to have to end up answering some questions here, because at the moment the position is just unsustainable.
We must just reiterate that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor has denied any wrongdoing and continues to do so.
Indeed. But there is also plenty more that the Palace could do to help with all of this. Does the Palace have records of guests of royal properties, people who went to visit Andrew? Because we know that Jeffrey Epstein, for example, was invited to Buckingham Palace by Prince Andrew. We know from the emails that were exchanged. What we now know is that Epstein's plane landed in the UK, came into the UK. We need to know who was on it and why. And when it comes to private jets, this is how a lot of people are trafficked. I mean, there are a lot of victims of modern slavery in the UK who come here because they are trafficked from countries that they have their passports taken away. They work as domestic servants in households, and they're allowed to kind of pass in and out of the country because there isn't the same level of scrutiny. So these are questions that it should be possible to answer quite simply. The question will be how easily are they answered, how willing are the authorities to give up these pieces of information. And we cannot forget that at the heart of all of this are a very large number of abused women who are living with the legacy of all of this and who rightly want justice and want answers. If these answers are easy enough to find, we should provide them.
Can I just read a statement from Stansted Airport, just in terms of private aircraft? And they're saying that all private aircraft at London Stansted operate through independent, fixed-based operators, which handle all aspects of private and corporate aviation in line with regulatory requirements. All immigration and customs checks for passengers arriving on private aircraft are carried out directly by Border Force.
Yeah, exactly. But we know that some of the private jet checks and logs are totally inadequate. I mean, I was reading last week that in some of the women that came on the Epstein plane, they didn't even have a name in the logs. It was just a female is on board. So trying to ascertain exactly who was on this aircraft, were they a victim? It's going to be incredibly difficult to be able to do it. But the onus now is on, I think, Andrew really. I know he denies it, but to come forward and give some answers. And, we've had pressure from the Prime Minister down for him to testify in this Congress case. I think realistically, there is only one person that can pile the pressure on him to do that, and that's Charles.
Also on the front page of the Eye. Jenny, do you see that happening realistically? Do you see him giving evidence and testifying to Congress in the United States?
In one respect, I want to say, what has he got to lose? He has lost his title. He has lost his reputation. He doesn't have tons of friends coming out and saying, oh, poor Andrew, be kind to him. He doesn't seem to have very much to lose. So, on one level, I would think he definitely should do it. But you asked me, can I see it happening? And the answer is probably not. I'm not sure that he has it in him to subject himself to public scrutiny like this, even though if, as he says, he is innocent, this would be his opportunity to make a case for it on a public stage and exonerate himself.
But if he does elect to give evidence, is there a scenario in which it could be worse for him?
Yeah, I mean, listen, some of these Congress hearings are just total show trials, and it's often used by congressmen and senators to just sort of pontificate and get a social media clip. We saw a lot of that with the Pam Bondi stuff last week, in which it was basically just a bit, self-congratulatory and vainglorious and the rest of it. So what it needs to be, I think, is a forensic interrogation, giving Andrew the chance to put his case across, but also meticulously going over the facts and the timeline of what happened here, because at the moment he can issue statements denying everything, which is all well and good, and we read them out, but he actually needs to start answering questions now, because they are piling up by the day, and they're only going to keep piling up as more revelations come out of these files.
Should we turn to the Telegraph now? And this is regarding Rachel Reeves blocking defence cash boost. Military chiefs sound alarm over £28 billion shortfall as funding requests rejected. Jenny?
Well, I mean, we know that the military is woefully underfunded. The government knows that too and has said as much. Keir Starmer setting this target of 2.5% of GDP will be spent on defence in this Parliament. And in fact, he was saying the hope was it was going to be 3% before the end of this Parliament. But according to the Telegraph, the person who holds the purse strings, Rachel Reeves, is blocking this much-needed cash boost, not just for personnel, but for hardware. This is a problem that is not going away. There is not enough money to go around. And, if one of the things that Keir Starmer is, setting himself up to represent, which is a Britain that is robust on the world stage, we have to have a properly funded military. But the question is, where is the money going to come from?
We read that Treasury officials are concerned that spending more on defence will force them to make cuts elsewhere or leave Ms Reeves with no choice but to enact another tax raid in next year's budget.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem at the moment, isn't it? We revealed in The Sun a few weeks ago there was this £28 billion shortfall being warned about by top brass into Downing Street. Clearly, the problem is we don't have any money in this country at the moment. And so defence would be great for, I think, Rachel Reeves to pay for. One, because it's seen as actually a growth area. You actually increase stuff in defence. There's so much jobs capacity in the UK to be able to, basically grow the economy by putting money into defence, but also in and of itself, it's a public good, especially at a time of heightened geopolitical tensions. The problem is, where does the savings come from? Now, I'm sure people would argue that there's many savings that can be made in the welfare bill, many savings that can be made potentially in health efficiencies and the rest of it. AI can do a lot of efficiencies now, and so, there has to be some money, I think, at some point for the MOD budget, because it is just being starved and starved and squeezed. And if cuts have to come from another department or elsewhere, then I think so be it. It's the defence of the realm.
And particularly when you see Donald Trump breathing down their necks in terms of defence spending, there is a lot of pressure, isn't there?
There is, and it's not just from Donald Trump. I think a lot of it's because of Donald Trump. There is a feeling that we need to be self-sufficient. We can no longer rely on America necessarily to bail us out and be our friend when we need bailing out. So there's that. But then there's also this question of where is this money going to come from? And we know that we have a Prime Minister and a Chancellor. Well, we have a Prime Minister that lacks authority, lacks the ability to stand up to his own backbenchers and say, look, we need to make these cuts, we're going to make these cuts. It's not like there is some area that they haven't looked at over the past 18 months that they can suddenly go, aha, there's more money here. This is a government that's staked its entire economic policy on growth that is simply not happening. So something has to give.
And it's a sense of paralysis. This defence investment plan was meant to come last summer. We're now into February. And it's just this sense that nothing can be done because, you're right, power is flowing out of Downing Street on a daily basis to Labour backbenchers. Is
that the reason for the delay? Is that the real reason?
No, it's haggling. Of course it is. It's haggling over the money between the MOD and the Treasury. Now, if the Treasury wants to submit to the MOD demands to give more money, then clearly cuts have to come from elsewhere. Where is that going to come from? Because they're so politically weak at the moment that they can't really afford to take money out of other parts, because it will again kick up another stink. And it's basically playing fiscal whack-a-mole, where you're trying to, put a fire out in some place and give money to another place, and then it kicks up a row elsewhere. So, yeah, I think it's a power problem, a lot of it.
Jenny, take us into the Metro, page 4, AI death bots. What's the story?
Well, this is actually quite an old story, I would say, dressed up as a news story. Well, it is a kind of news story, I'll give it that. It's to do with what happens after you die. Can technology give you life after death? And this story says that life can continue with AI. Meta has patented a bot that will... It's quite depressing. You'll be posting on Instagram and Facebook even after you die with your own death bot. I actually wrote about sort of the digital afterlife in 2014, I think. I wrote an article about this. There are people trying to do this. There was this whole idea of you leave a repository of data about yourself, which AI will be able to use to carry on after you die, which does beg two questions. One, is it you, if it's actually an AI? And two, does it really matter if you're not there to see it? I mean, who do we really want the perpetual voices of our great-great-great-great-great-grandparents tweeting for the rest of time just because an AI bot can do it? There's a point where you have to say, is this really necessary? Is this just fear of death and narcissism? So it might be possible, but do we actually want it?
Very unsavoury, don't you think, Jack?
Yeah, I do think so. I don't really sort of like the idea of living forever throughout a bot. I'd rather just sort of have my run, have a good innings, and then fade off into the sunset, into that big newsroom in the sky, rather than being talked about by some...
Don't like it one
No, it's
bit.
very Black Mirror, isn't it?
Yeah, don't like it at all.
It might go rogue as well and say something you'd never say and you wouldn't be able to do anything about it. No, don't like it.
No. I think once you leave this mortal coil, that is it. Unless you believe in the afterlife, which... That's a whole nother discussion. Shall we move on to sport, of a sense? Russia is back in the fold, in the realm of international sport, at least. Despite the doping scandals and invasion of Ukraine, a Russian team is going to the Paralympics in Italy next month. Could the World Cup and the Olympics be next? Let's go back to our sports correspondent, Rob Harris. Rob, tell us about this decision today. Breaking news it's been.
It is. There will be 6 Russians competing under their own flag, under their own anthem at the Paralympics next month. This hasn't happened at an Olympics or Paralympics since Sochi in 2014. After that, they weren't banned for the annexation of Crimea, but the discovery of the state-sponsored doping scheme to cheat to win medals in the Olympics and the Paralympics at their home games. That ban was in place for many years. The only Russians who then could compete were as neutrals. Then, with the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the sanctions then became ones because of the war. Then I discovered late last year that the International Paralympic Committee had decided to lift its ban on Russia because it believed that Russian athletes were no longer using sport to promote the war. It provoked an outcry from politicians across Europe, including the government here. They haven't succeeded in persuading the Paralympic chiefs to overturn their decision. So it means, while we thought no Russians would have time to qualify, instead they've handed out these special wildcard places. So they will be there in Milan Cortina. They'll be marching out at the opening ceremony with the Russian flag. And I think that's when I was in Milan a few weeks ago for the Olympics opening ceremony. Then we had booing for both Israel and the US Vice President J.D. Vance. There could potentially be a toxic atmosphere, given what we saw there, given the high-profile way this remark Russia's return to the international sporting stage in such a way, and potentially down the line, an Olympics return could be on the card too.
Yeah, indeed. Not everyone happy about this decision today. The Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, has posted on social media saying this is completely the wrong decision, resuming the right of athletes from Russia and Belarus to compete under their own flags while the brutal invasion of Ukraine continues sends a terrible message. Well, the International Paralympic Committee should reconsider this decision urgently. The thoughts there of Lisa Nandy. Jenny?
I think it's really terrible. And I think, you might be able to make an argument saying they're not using sport in a political way or whatever the International Paralympic Committee has said. But the fact is, Russia doesn't have a free press. And if we want to send a message to people in Russia that the international community does not support this invasion of Ukraine, this is a very powerful way of getting that message through to a country where the media is so tightly controlled. The rest of the world does not accept this invasion of Ukraine. And this slow creep back, this is exactly what Putin is looking for. He thinks that in this war of attrition, everyone will just get tired of being angry with Russia and fighting back. And this, of all things, just maintaining this ban is a simple way of showing that we still believe it is not acceptable for one nation to invade another.
Yeah, there's something in what you say about the creep away from it being an abnormality. Last year, the IPC president, Andrew Parsons, he told Sky News that Russian participation in the Games was not linked to participation in wars.
But things like sport has always been political, for decades now, going back to, the apartheid in South Africa when they were kicked out of the sporting community. And I just think that Jenny is totally right. It basically suggests that in some way, by bringing them back out from the cold, that somehow, their actions in Ukraine are getting less severe. They are not. I was there only a few weeks ago, and you can just see the devastation, the freezing cold Ukrainians in Kiev because of Vladimir Putin's actions. Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, saying tonight that she's angry. How many times have we heard politicians say they're deeply concerned about something, they're furious? They're not just commentators here. I'm sure that we give a large amount of funding to the International Paralympic Committee. What are we doing about it? Are we trying to corral other nations to get them to change their decision? Are we going to threaten to pull funding for them if they continue doing this? Are we going to try and make a stand here? I think the onus is now on the Culture Secretary to maybe explain what the British government's going to do about it, because you can't, on the one hand, say that you're full square behind Ukraine and against Vladimir Putin and the Russians, and on the other hand, basically roll over in the wake of this decision.
Although she is saying that the committee should reconsider their decision urgently. We're going to go back to Rob for an update on the news from Real Madrid. Rob.
Tonight's Champions League game, Vinicius Jr., the Real Madrid player, was racially abused, he alleged, during the match at Benfica. The players started to walk off the pitch. The match was stopped for 10 minutes. We have now been hearing from some of his teammates, the England international, former Liverpool player Trent Alexander-Arnold, who plays with him at Real Madrid. He's said that, I think what has happened tonight is a disgrace to football and has overshadowed the performance, as well as an amazing goal, that amazing goal from Vinicius himself. And he talks about, the way that Vinicius has faced abuse in the past. He's been subjected to it throughout his career, and he said there's no place for it in football or society. It's disgusting. And we'll wait to see just what happens now to Benfica's player, Gianluca Prestiani. UEFA can impose a 10-game ban. But at the moment, we've not heard anything from Benfica on this.
Rob, thank you very much for that. And with that, we are going to take a break. Much more coming up. Do stay with us.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Durman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand,
Wow.
here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal? Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Bagher has this report. And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report. Mr. Zuma, Sky News. We're trying to see as much as we can.
You are watching The Wrap. We just want to bring you our top story again, and that is the passing of the civil rights icon, Jesse Jackson, at the age of 84. Jenny.
Wonderful to see all the footage of him today. I could watch it all day. Just so charismatic, such a fantastic orator and international statesman, and an era of a face of an era that is becoming very much a bygone era. So whilst it's very sad, the news we've had today, it's wonderful to get a chance to revisit those images.
And Barack Obama saying that he stood on his shoulders, essentially, because of his run that paved the way for him to enter office.
He totally paved the way. And it's every time one of these great Titanic figures from the past dies, it is just that sort of strand from history being snapped. You know, he was described today as sort of the bridge between two worlds. And, you know, he was the protege of Martin Luther King and then stood in Washington, D.C. to see Barack Obama be elected the first black president in 2008. It's extraordinary.
Yes, and we'll never forget all those tears that flowed when he saw that come to fruition as he watched in the crowd on that freezing January Morning. Well, that was the wrap. Thanks for watching. On the day, civil rights leader Jesse Jackson died at the age of 84. We leave you with a reminder of his life and work in his own words.
I wasn't always on television. Writers were not always outside my door. I know abandonment and people being mean to you and saying you're nothing and nobody and can never be anything. Every one of these funny labels they put on you, call you outcast, low down, you can't make it, you're nothing, you're from nobody, subclass, underclass. I'm a working person's person. That's why I understand you, whether you're black or white, I understand work. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had a shovel programmed for my hand. I was born in the slum, but the slum was not born in me. And it wasn't born in you, and you can make it. Wherever you are tonight, you can make it. Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it. It gets dark sometimes, but the morning comes. America will get better and better. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. On tomorrow night and beyond. Keep hope alive. I love you very much.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Tonight on The Wrap, the life and legacy of a civil rights icon.
Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. On tomorrow night and beyond. Keep hope alive. I love you very much.
Jesse Jackson was America's most influential black leader between Martin Luther King's March for Freedom in the 1960s and Barack Obama's election to the White House. His language had a spiritual force that spoke to everyone who needed hope in their lives. Tonight, we'll look at how he changed America and the world. Also ahead, a disgrace to football. That's how Real Madrid's Trent Alexander-Arnold describes racist abuse at tonight's Champions League match against Benfica. The game was suspended for 10 minutes after Madrid striker Vinicius Jr. claimed a Benfica player called him a monkey. Here, unemployment rises to the highest for 5 years, and it's worst amongst the young. And what a reform government could look like. Nigel Farage unveils his top team, along with a promise to rip up the Equality Act. We discuss the day's biggest stories with Jack Elsom and Jenny Kleeman, plus a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including growing pressure on the former Prince Andrew. Good evening. Jesse Jackson cried the night that Barack Obama was elected president. Today, Obama paid tribute in his 2 historic runs for president. He laid the foundations for my own campaign to the highest office in the land, he said. We stood on his shoulders. Jack and Jenny, your thoughts?
I think in an age when we could just really do with some hope and some optimism and some resilience, it's been wonderful to hear so much of his fantastic oratory today, but his passing is particularly poignant.
Jack, we remember that phrase, keep hope alive, don't we, when we think of him?
I mean, which politician on either side of the Atlantic can stir a crowd like Jesse Jackson did? You know, it's such a dying art oratory, and you can imagine maybe some of the current crop of politicians could do well by studying some of those clips in the coming months and years.
Indeed, indeed. Well, our correspondent David Blevins looks back on the life and legacy of the Reverend Jesse Jackson.
We must never surrender. We must go forward.
Articulate, impassioned, electrifying. He was the man who opened the door, the first African-American to run for President of the United States.
Let's be bigger and better as a nation.
His campaign speeches emboldening the marginalized.
Hold your head high. Stick your chest out. You can make it. It gets dark sometimes, but the morning comes. Don't you surrender. We must never surrender. America will get better and better. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
The son of a single mother from Greenville, North Carolina, he grew up in a deeply segregated southern community and became a protege of Martin Luther King Jr., witnessing his assassination firsthand and inheriting his mantle.
Jesse Jackson changed American politics. Jesse Jackson changed the civil rights movement. He was a consequential and transformative figure.
It was a lifetime of organising. He became a voice for the voiceless. Black Americans, women, the gay community and the poor.
This is America, the richest nation in the history of the world.
Jesse Jackson ran for president twice, changing US politics forever. He didn't win, but paved the way for the first black man who did.
Change has come to America.
It was in many ways the fulfillment of his hopes. They did have a complicated relationship. Jackson, a prophetic voice of challenge. Obama, more focused on building a coalition for change. In a statement, President Obama said his wife Michelle got her first glimpse of political organising at the Jacksons' kitchen table, adding, "We stood on his shoulders." President Trump posted numerous photos of him with Reverend Jesse Jackson on his social media site and wrote, "Despite the fact that I am falsely and consistently called a racist by the scoundrels and lunatics on the radical left, Democrats all, it was always my pleasure to help Jesse along the way." He emerged from the long shadow of Martin Luther King Jr., their combined legacy having carved a path for generations.
People got to realize that they were worth more because of the speeches that he gave.
It showed that it doesn't matter what our skin color is or where we're from, that we all have innate talents that we were given and that we are all the same.
We can dream as much as we want and we can achieve what we dream of. Yeah.
One of the last towering figures of the struggle for equality has gone. And for Jesse Jackson, there can only be one epitaph.
Keep hope alive.
Well, as David said, they're towering figure. They don't make them like that anymore. And we have to remember that he was a protege of Martin Luther King.
He was, and he was there when Martin Luther King was shot. I mean, you forget also about the incredible courage it must have taken to take on that mantle, which he arguably did. I mean, he took on that role. He was the natural successor of Martin Luther King, and. Yes, they don't make them like that anymore. And I have to say, I find the statement that Donald Trump made painful to read because, first of all, it's all about Donald Trump, pictures of Donald Trump with Jesse Jackson, but then also about him being accused of being a racist and that him not being able to resist making some dig at Obama because of it. I mean, I think Jesse Jackson came from, unfortunately, what is probably a bygone age, an age of kind of honour and dignity and inspiring people through rousing, hopeful optimism rather than the kind of grinding social media world in which we live now, which is all about kind of riling people up. But, you know, he was an extraordinary statesman on the international stage. He represented, he was a powerful figure for so many people, not just black Americans, people all over the world. And, you know, he'll be sorely missed.
I mean, he did speak of Donald Trump following the murder of George Floyd and said that he was, immature and he was on the wrong side of history. But it's not about Donald Trump, is it, today?
It's definitely not.
Although he's tried to make it about him. This is about Jesse Jackson, a complete icon in the civil rights movement and all that he stood for.
Quite Churchillian as well when you sort of listen to those clips. You know, the sort of the "we will never surrender." You know, every generation you get these people that sort of like ordinary people that sort of rise to do extraordinary things in times. And, you know, in the one hand, he was totally extraordinary in what he did. But on the other hand, and you could attest to this, seems like quite a normal bloke in the way he speaks and the way he can connect with people. And he comes from a very sort of like humble beginnings and background. And then we watched that clip of you earlier, interview him. He did just seem like quite a sort of a humble, normal guy. Yeah, a guy you maybe go for a pint with.
I can definitely agree to that. And should we have a look at that clip? Because in 2013, after the death of Nelson Mandela, I spoke to Jesse Jackson here on Sky News. I mean, of course, we have to remember that before he became president, he was known as a freedom fighter, and some even labelled him as a terrorist. Did that label sit uncomfortably with you?
Well, it's uncomfortable because the fact is the South African government was a state of terrorism, state-sponsored terrorism. And he was on America's terrorist list until like 3 years ago. But to leave from the pits of being considered a terrorist to the most moral, authoritative person in the world was quite a journey. But you had the preparation as a lawyer, you had the spirit, and he would not, as I say, even let suffering and persecution stand in the way. And importantly, he began to gain strength from his status as a prisoner. He could have gotten that much earlier. He chose jail over freedom without dignity and freedom without political change. And now what we must be very aware of, even as we extol his virtues this morning and tonight, whatever it is, tomorrow or tonight, is that the political apartheid is over, but the economic apartheid is real. About 10% of the people still own about 80% of the land. About 80% of the people own about 10% of the land. There's abounding poverty yet. So racism and poverty and violence are still very much a part of that society, but people are at least free to fight that fight.
It's not every day you get to interview such a huge Historical figure. It must have been very memorable for you.
Extremely memorable, and also the fact that he was a big anti-apartheid campaigner and was actually there on the day that Nelson Mandela was released. He was there talking about his death, and that I'd seen him the night before this interview. He was the guest speaker at my daughter's school, and I'd got on with his chief of staff. So messaged them very early hours of the morning when this happened and said, would he come on? And he was on his way to Heathrow, took a diversion and came into the Sky Studios to speak to us. But such an approachable character, the fact that I felt that I could do that, and he responded and came in and gave a brilliant interview. Just testament to the man.
And you maintained that relationship with him for a few years, you
Yes, said? No, maintained the relationship ever since that happened. He did a birthday tribute video for my husband on his 50th birthday. And sent him a message, and everybody was really impressed at the party. That picture there is of my daughter. She'll be cringing at that now. She's much older. She's 27 now, but that was when she was in high school. So, yes, it made a huge impression on our family. And this is a picture when he was visiting Lagos in Nigeria. He was the African ambassador for a time. And he came to visit Lagos. My husband was working in Lagos at the time. My sister's also in that photo. And I arranged for them to have a dinner. And they just said, you know, when he arrived with his massive motorcade and all the security, it was as if the President of the United States had arrived. He ran for the office twice, didn't achieve it, but it seems like he had all of the trappings outside of that.
It's one of these things where, you know, once a campaigner, always a campaigner. And even in that clip there, clearly, you know, the amount him and his movement achieved since, you know, the 1960s up to the present day, but it's still got the sense, and I know we spoke about this after the sort of George Floyd, that your life's work's never really complete, isn't it? Clearly you do so much to move on the cause from what it was, but there's always more to do, and it seemed that even in that clip when he was talking to you, there's still very much a part of him that was, it almost seemed, you know, frustrated that, you know, there was more to go.
Yeah, but he's earned his rest.
Yes.
Yes. He's earned his rest because he fought a very good fight for a very long time.
But it's always wonderful to know that important people can be not very self-important and can be humble as well. That makes them even more remarkable.
Yes, yeah. Well, Jesse Jackson features on the front of a few of tomorrow's front pages, including The Guardian, which has former President Barack Obama's words, "We stood on his shoulders." Now, it's unbelievable that we're going from Jesse Jackson to this next story, very poignant. Real Madrid's Champions League match was stopped for several minutes tonight after the Spanish club's striker, Vinicius Jr., claimed he was called a monkey by a Benfica player. Well, Rob's here, and we'll go to him in just a moment. But first, Jenny, incredibly depressing, as I say, moving from Jesse Jackson and his Keep Hope Alive mantra and his anti-racism fight throughout his life. And this is happening in 2026.
It's extraordinary. It's very, very depressing, and it is terrible that this is where we are. But perhaps it's not surprising. We currently have a president of the United States who thinks nothing of posting a video of former President Barack Obama and his wife as a monkey. This is about the normalisation of certain kinds of phrases, certain kinds of attitudes. And, you know, we have to stamp this out. But whilst it is tolerable in any arena, this is going to keep happening. We have to have zero tolerance for racist language and racism everywhere.
Jack?
I mean, and just like, you know, what's going to be the impact on young black kids wanting to go into football? I mean, Vinicius Jr. is probably the most famous black footballer on the planet. You know, he's one of the most successful footballers. What is going to be the impact there? You know, I heard Rob earlier saying that I think that UEFA can give a 10-match ban. I mean, that seems nothing compared to sort of the scale of the crime here, if proven. So, you know, I think that there's going to be some hard questions for Benfica, you know, for UEFA, and for sort of the wider sporting body on this one.
Well, here's what England and Madrid star Trent Alexander-Arnold said. I can't comment too much on it, as it's an ongoing investigation at this point. I think what has happened tonight is a disgrace to football and overshadowed the performance as well after an amazing goal. Vinny has been subject to this a few times throughout his career. To ruin a night like this for our team is a disgrace. No place for it in football or society. it is disgusting. To Rob now. Rob, you heard those words there. It's a disgrace. We don't have any sound to Rob at the moment. We're going to fix that. But following on from that quote, that it will be... It's a disgrace and it spoilt the game. This has happened to this player before, so it's not the first time, and this isn't something new.
Yes, and it's the Champions League. It's incredibly high profile. As Jack says, he's one of the most high-profile players in the game. If it can happen to him, what does that mean for other players? What does it mean for games that aren't televised? People aren't mic'd up. It's, as I said, it's about the normalisation of all of this. If it can happen so blatantly in such a high-profile game, then what does that mean for football itself?
And we've had, campaigns like Kick Racism Out of Football, concentrating on the fans and their behaviour.
Exactly, yeah.
But, I mean, this is a different level.
Yeah, clearly. And, they wear armbands and they take the knee and the gestures, which are fine. And with fans, it's easy to just sort of, kick them out of the ground. If it's another player, I think that you should just chuck the book at them because, calling someone a monkey on the pitch to a rival player having just scored a goal is just, clearly outrageous. And I think any right-minded person would accept that. A 10-game ban from UEFA. I don't think Benfica even got 10 games left in the Champions League to play. So, it does seem that something's going to have to be done. I still think that the club itself will have to do something. Why would they want... Obviously, there's going to be an investigation into this. Why would they want a player, clearly of this character, bringing them into disrepute like this? Benfica are a long-established club. Jose Mourinho is a manager. I'm sure he's not happy about this at the moment. I think that the onus is on them to probably act in this one.
While there is an investigation going on, which there will be, should the player concerned be taken out of the game completely?
Well, I think if you want to give the impression that the game is taking racism seriously while somebody is under suspicion, but surely this should be something that's quite easy to investigate. There are microphones, there are cameras on people. This investigation shouldn't take long. But yes, it's a question of not just doing the right thing, but being seen to do the right thing, being seen to be transparent and getting this sorted out very quickly.
OK, let's see if we can go back to Rob now, just to get his take on exactly what went down this evening.
Ultimately, this is a person in their place of work alleging they've faced racist abuse, with a brilliant moment from Vinicius Junior scoring a wonderful curling goal to give Real Madrid this 1-0 lead in the first leg, completely marred by the racist abuse he's alleging happened from Gianluca Prestiani, the Argentine player, the game being stopped. And I've got to say, the referee did enact the anti-racism protocol, stopped the game, took the players off to a side to deal with it. Vinicius has talked in the past about potentially just abandoning matches to really send out a message. And it was after the match we've been getting a lot more reaction and suggesting now, I wonder how Jose Mourinho will react. Well, we have heard his reaction. You could say he's attempted to somehow justify the abuse by saying every stadium where Vinicius plays, something happens, and talking about how he celebrated the goal right in front of the Benfica fans. In fact, Clarence Seedorf, a former Real Madrid player, has been saying on Amazon that Mourinho's made a big mistake, the fact he's, somehow trying to justify this racial abuse. And there will now be focus on just what UEFA do, their investigation. And it was 13 years ago that UEFA did introduce a minimum 10-game ban for racism, so really showing there are tough sanctions. It's just how often they are used. And then beyond that, what is done to eradicate racist abuse. Interestingly, in the last week or so, the English football bodies have got together with the police, the FA, Kick It Out, and the football policing units, try and come together to work on how they eradicate racist abuse, particularly online. And very often, it's not football working together, and this will be another moment that puts into the spotlight, is enough being done?
Yeah, Rob, thank you very much for the moment. Justification, is that
just
incredulous?
Insane. You cannot justify being racist. You can justify being cross with someone for celebrating inappropriately. There are all sorts, but there's no justification for being racist, and everybody knows that's racist language. Everybody knows.
I'm actually very shocked with Jose Mourinho. This is a manager of sort of the highest quality. He's been there for decades now. He used to manage Real Madrid itself, been around various clubs, Chelsea in London, Spurs, Man United, for any justification he must know is just totally unwarranted. You know, you can be a menace on the pitch, but nothing justifies that. So, you know, we'll have to see that clip.
Very wrong signals and messages being sent there. We're going to take a break now. It's been quite heavy hour, hasn't it? Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Ridge and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started. What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
You are watching The Wrap. Jack and Jenny still with me. Now, the rate of unemployment has increased again to the highest level in 5 years, and it's the young who are being hit hardest. Surprised?
We saw this coming. You've got the raise in the national minimum wage, you've got the raise in business rates, in employers' national insurance contributions. We all knew that young people would be hit hardest by this, and here we are.
Jack?
Yeah, you know, Labour for a long time now have been hailing the rise in the minimum wage as really the jewel in their economic crown. Will they now be forced to backtrack on this because it is really hampering businesses' hiring ability for young people especially?
Well, let's take a look at our economics and data editor, Ed Conway's figures at the wall.
So we've got the latest unemployment data. Let me just kind of go through some of the key data points here. That's overall unemployment. And this line is showing you can see that was the post-financial crisis period. It came down and then you had the pandemic. And here's what's significant. It's starting to grind higher. And that's 5.2% where it is at the moment. That is the highest in 5 years. in terms of overall unemployment, the number of people, or the percentage of people who are out of work and who are trying to kind of get work at the moment, highest in 5 years. And that's looking overall, so all age groups. If you look at youth unemployment, here's what's kind of striking here. So that's high enough. But look at youth unemployment. It's always higher because this is young people trying to kind of get into work, a lot of the time in their first jobs. That is actually the highest in 11 years. So it's tough, you know, for everyone right now, particularly tough for young people. And if you look not just at unemployment, which is that formal measure of, you know, people who are out of work, but also the percentage of people who are just not in the labour market at all. It's called economic inactivity, and it's an important thing to focus on. Look at this. So same axis again. Look at that. It's even higher, particularly for young people, so 16 to 24. And what we're going to do is look not just back to 2010, but we're going to go back all the way to 1992. So it's the same data, but going to 1992, when you kind of get a sense of the trend. Look, 1992, 25%. But it's just kind of gone up and up and up and up. And the striking thing about this is it doesn't seem to be kind of going up and down when there's recessions or indeed recoveries. It's just getting higher. More and more people each year, young people in particular, not in the workforce, up to 39%, so up from 25% to 39% in recent decades. That's kind of striking. In terms of the overall comparison, UK versus other countries around the world, this is showing you the unemployment rate in the UK. It is 5.2% in our measure, but actually these are the most comparable data points. The UK is middle of the pack, so you've got Japan, Germany, the US there, the UK, Italy, Canada, France. Doesn't look so bad, does it? But here's what's significant, okay? So look not just at the overall level, but look at how it's changing over the past year. And here's what you see. That's the change over the past year. So UK up by 0.7 percentage points, faster than any other G7 nation. So that is a cause for concern. And so if you put it all together, the Bank of England, they are focusing on interest rates. Obviously, interest rates up at the moment, 3.75%. They've come down quite a bit. Before these numbers came out, most economists thought they might wait all the way till April, kind of end of April, actually, to cut them again. The question at the moment for most economists is when rather than if, down to 3.5%. Now they think that might come even sooner, so maybe as soon as next month, March, just because they're concerned. They think inflation is, you know, relatively under control, but they're concerned that you've got other things, relatively weak growth and unemployment on the rise.
Well, as you can see, Lucy has joined us. Will Rachel Reeves be relatively pleased at those figures or not?
I don't think she'll be very pleased. Funnily enough, a senior Labour advisor was speaking to them today, and they were talking about, you know, we need to be more positive. We need to be more positive about the economy, talking about the cost of living. And when people see figures like this, they just think, well, no, things aren't getting better. I mean, they're really quite striking. What Labour would say, and if you remember when they attempted to bring down the benefits bill, but obviously it caused that big rebellion, actually among those measures was this thing called the Youth Guarantee, this package to try and get more young people into work. So a kind of a multi-million-pound pot for apprenticeships, for training schemes, for people on universal credit to incentivise them to be in work. So they would say that they are doing what they can to address this problem. I thought Reform today was quite interesting because one of Suella Braverman's big packages was talking about universities, scrapping this kind of 50% target of people to go to unis, saying that actually we need to get people into trades. I think all political parties are coming, know that this is a problem and will try and find different ways to solve it.
You mentioned Reform. Shall we move on to their shenanigans today? Already under pressure, this is the lineup of a new political team Keir Starmer is facing. Well, Nigel Farage has unveiled what could be Britain's next government. Robert Jenrick would be in charge of the economy. He's promising more jobs. We've been talking about that. Richard Tice gets the business brief. Zia Youssef, Home Secretary, and Suella Braverman completes the top team as Secretary of State for Education and Equality. She's already said that she would rip up the Equalities Act. So, Jenny, this is what Nigel Farage is calling the shadow cabinet, but it's really just a list of their spokespeople in some areas.
Yes, and we don't have a spokesperson for defence, and we don't have a spokesperson for health, which are pretty important briefs, really, at the moment. And Richard Tice, who was tipped to be the Chancellor in any Reform government, now seems to have lots of jobs, but not Chancellor. So he's in charge of energy. He said he was in charge of housing, he's in charge of business, he's in charge of trade. He said he's delighted about all of this and delighted that Robert Jenrick is Chancellor, but it's Shadow Chancellor in this lineup. But the thing is, Nigel Farage has a bit of a headache in that he cannot put Suella Braverman or Robert Jenrick anywhere near the shadow Home Office because, of course, they were the architects of the situation in which the situation that reform is rallying against so much, the situation of immigration in this country at the moment. So Zia Youssef has that role. But it remains to be seen whether or not he's playing to the strengths of the people who are now part of reform, particularly the recent defectors in Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick, or whether or not he is placating them and keeping them on side because they are big beasts. They were very significant in the Tory party. Will voters think of this as a refreshing alternative to mainstream politics when you've got people who played such a significant role in government in the past? Remains to be seen. But I think Nigel Farage will be delighted with the news this week, particularly when we're talking about the local elections, and then this getting as much coverage as it has done. He's very much, it's very much a win for him, I would say.
But many quite critical and suggesting that all of his hires are Tory rejects. And he said today that he is going to keep order and there'll be no psychodrama, and anybody who is against the party or is disloyal, they'll be out.
Yeah, I mean, like, Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman both caused mischief when they were in the Tory cabinet. You know, both resigned. Well, Suella Braverman sacked and then resigned from various prime ministers under Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. Listen, they've got no option now other than to basically fall into line. You know, it's not as if they're going to go back to the Tory party. They won't have them. I think one interesting point: Robert Jenrick, new Shadow Chancellor, Reform's aspiring Chancellor, making his first speech tomorrow in the City of London. And what he's going to do is affirm that Reform would keep the credibility and the independence of both the Bank of England and the Office of Budget Responsibility. Now, this is quite a big statement of intent by him in Reform. You know, these two institutions have both been held up in various elements of the Conservative right as the bogeymen of the past few years. You know, they were blamed for the mini-budget by Liz Truss and some of her acolytes. Nigel Farage previously has had a go at the Bank of England, had a go at the OBR. So I think it is interesting that they are trying to restore economic credibility to their plans by saying, no, actually, we are going to stick by these institutions. They're going to mark our homework, and we're happy for them to have that scrutiny on us. So it's an interesting first gambit, I think.
Should we take a look at the latest poll of polls? Reform with a 10-point lead at the moment over Labour. Do you think that's likely to continue, Lucy?
Well, it's been that way since last spring. I think Nigel Farage said today something like more than 200 polls they've been leading. So if you take that into account, there is no sign that that is slowing down, although the Conservatives, opposition parties, like to say that it is narrowing, it's slowing down. Conservatives that you speak to want to very much underplay this. One kind of very well-respected former minister said to me today, nobody thinks Suella was a sensible force for good on anything when the Tories were in government. They are effectively trying to say we're losing all of the ones that weren't very good anyway. I think the main point from today is that Nigel Farage wanted to say this is not the Nigel Farage show. We are a party with an identity outside of me. But he was kind of front and centre of the whole thing. I think in the press conference, you know, nobody else answered any of the questions. I think the message that they will find difficult to really cut through to people is that this isn't about Nigel Farage, it's about a different type of politics.
That's what he was saying, but the optics, as you say, completely different and odds with that.
Richard Tice said something to Ali Fortescue earlier. Nigel Farage is the one that makes headlines. You know, he himself, they themselves admit that he is the one that makes headlines for them. So it'll be interesting to see how that cuts through to people.
He is Reform. Let's take a look at the front pages and see what's making the news tomorrow. So the Eye reports that another police force is looking into potential links between the former Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein as Essex police assess information about private flights into and out of Stansted Airport. That story is also on the front of The Sun, following the release of information published in the Epstein files. And it also makes the front page of The Mail, which says the pressure is piling on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The Express leads on the UK's unemployment rate, which has increased again, as you've been hearing, to the highest level in nearly 5 years. The Times claims that the government may scrap its promise to pay young people the same national minimum wage as older workers in a bid to curb youth unemployment. The Telegraph reports that Rachel Reeves is resisting pressure from military chiefs to spend billions more on defence. The Guardian leads on new data saying that thousands of recently built homes were constructed in areas now deemed to be at risk of flooding. The Financial Times reports that the government has shelved expensive plans on a project to streamline international trade. Russian dissident Roman Dobrokotov tells the Metro he fears for his life after being named as a target of the Russian state. And The Star leads on comments from celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay saying his tough upbringing has made him a better father. So, what should we start with first? Let's delve into some serious stuff, leaving the Star headline aside there. Times, page 25, having a look at this story regarding Iran. It's gone relatively quiet over Iran, hasn't it, since Donald Trump said that he had an armada rushing towards the country and would take action.
Yes, I mean, there has been some kind of progress today with members of the Iranian delegation saying that there is a framework for talks is in place, but this is very high stakes. You have the presence of US forces in the Middle East ramping up and equally Iranian forces ramping up in order to show their muscle in return. These talks are ongoing, but there is a sense that there is a framework and that you know, a window of opportunity has opened, as the Iranian delegation has been saying today.
Iran has not enriched a single gram of uranium since the airstrike, so freezing enrichment for some years would not be a painful concession.
Yeah, this is what we always hear from Iran, isn't it? You know, even after Barack Obama signed that deal with them back in 2015 to lift sanctions in return for them pausing their nuclear enrichment programme, it later transpired they'd still been continuing with it. And so I do think that there is a recognition here that, you know, Khamenei seems to be on his last life anyway. You both had the internal pressure from the people of Iran and those incredibly brave uprisings which we saw over the past few months. But then also, you know, Donald Trump clearly sometimes chickens out, sometimes puts his money where his mouth is. He's so unpredictable, you can never really tell, and you probably don't want to take that chance if you're the Ayatollah sitting in Tehran right now.
Yes, but also he did claim to have bombed the entire nuclear facility and completely wiped out the all of it. So here we are, you know. Here we are. Take everything with a pinch of salt.
Or a bucket. To the Metro, and this story regarding cosmetic jabs. It's a bit of a, well, the headline there suggesting it's a bit of a Wild West, what you get and where it's administered.
I mean, some of the locations in which people are having these Brazilian butt lifts are crazy. They're having dangerous injections in garden sheds, hotel rooms and public toilets. I mean, it would be funny if it wasn't so serious. You know, people have died having these rogue operations. I do think, you know, while clearly MPs are saying that more legislation needs to be put in place to ban these, and there has been so many stories in the press about just how they can go so badly wrong, you know, I would say to people, if you're being offered an injection in a public toilet, you may maybe actually like sort of check your senses. Probably not the best thing to do, is it? You know, you probably don't need a parliamentary.
Some people really want a very round bottom, though.
You probably don't need a parliamentary committee to tell you that this is not a good idea, people. You know, so I do think that an onus maybe in the public to realise that don't go into someone's garden shed with the promise of a Brazilian butt lift, because it might not end very well for you.
Yeah, I mean, there is a serious side. There is a serious side to it, which is, you know, some people have died, people have had really serious complications, people have had sepsis. You know, these are injections. So even though it's not surgery, you are having somebody put a needle into you. Obviously, there needs to be regulation to make sure that this is not being done casually. But equally, yes, you can use your senses when you're about to be injected with something. You need to make sure it's being done in a clean place by a person who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, just basically, basic line, be sensible about it if you must. We're going to take a break. Coming up next, we'll take a look at more of the stories through the papers. Do stay with us.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
You are watching The Wrap. Should we take you into our last few stories? We're going to start with your paper, Jack, and the headline there, Cops in Andy sex probe, Andrew Mountbatten, Windsor, facing further developments.
Yeah, 7 police forces are now investigating the myriad of claims in the Epstein files, trawling through 3 million pages released in the US Department for Justice. Some of them clearly are relating to Andrew Mountbatten. Windsor denies any claims, but the pressure is now really starting to turn on the former prince to give evidence and either cooperate with any police inquiry, but more potently, testify in front of the US Congress, as he has been asked to do by that oversight committee. You know, there has been many calls now from the Prime Minister down for him to go to Washington and testify. I think that what we're going to have to see is more pressure being applied, probably from Buckingham Palace. I imagine they're the only ones who really can force him to go over there. But as we've been discussing, you know, at the end of the day, if he doesn't want to, then there's not really much that can be done, despite just becoming a social pariah, or more than he already is.
Jenny, what do you think the likely outcome is of this? Will he eventually be forced to testify?
Well, the question is who can force him, and we know that the person who can really force him is his brother, the king. And, you know, these headlines are not going away. These front pages are not going away. There is a feeling of palpable disgust that the more that is uncovered about Epstein and his links to Prince Andrew after he was convicted, after Prince Andrew said that he'd cut off contact with him, and one of the things that came out today was his Christmas card, Andrew's Christmas card that he sent with pictures of his daughters, after he had supposedly cut off contact with Jeffrey Epstein. This is not going away, and if he has nothing to hide, then the best thing that he can do is to reveal everything that he knows. And the palace, there's plenty more that the palace can do as well. They can reveal whether or not they have records of who visited Andrew on royal properties. Were any of Jeffrey Epstein's guests, who we know he flew in on these private jets, who were they? Why were they here? Did any of them visit royal properties? These are all questions that are quite simple to answer, particularly if you've got nothing to hide. So I don't know whether or not he will. I don't know whether or not Andrew Mountbatten Windsor will answer these questions. I really think he should. I think he's got nothing to lose. But I think the critical factor will be the level of embarrassment for the king.
Of course, Andrew has denied all wrongdoing in the past and continues to do so. It's also on the front page of the Mail, by the way, that story. But let's have a look at the eye inside page 7 about Starmer's cufflinks. Can you tell me more?
It's interesting. When leaders meet, world leaders, often they exchange gifts. Now, if they're over a certain amount, I think it's about £140, then they are held by the department. So, you know, if Donald Trump were to give Keir Starmer a pair of cufflinks, for example, which are over the value of £140, Downing Street would hold them in their vaults, and it can't go to the Prime Minister unless they explicitly decide to purchase them, which is what happened here. So when Donald Trump came over to Chequers for that pomp and pageantry state visit back in the summer, I was there. It was a very nice occasion. He gave them a nice pair of cufflinks, and Keir Starmer has decided to buy these cufflinks. It's emerged in the Ministerial Records, and he says that he's bought them for his eldest son. So quite a nice gift from the President to Keir Starmer's child.
There's no wrongdoing here, is there?
No, there's no wrong. He's done everything by the book. It's just an interesting fact. Yeah. And why not? Why not have some memorabilia from your family of this crazy time in your life where you had to make nice and be charming with Donald Trump? And I want to see what these cufflinks look like, because I have a feeling they wouldn't be very understated.
They're going to be so blingy.
Exactly.
Gold with diamonds around it.
It's a hilarious thing to be able to give to
Donald
your son.
Trump tea.
So, exactly. I think it's great. And if it's all by the book, you know, I'm all for it.
You sound like you designed the cufflinks. You've got them down to a T. Wow. Yes, we have to look for a photo of the cufflinks. Last story, the Metro. Andy Murray Game, set and match to inspirational Murray. He's been named the most inspirational British sports star of the 21st century. Got 20 seconds.
I mean, is he the most inspirational? I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Andy Murray. He's clearly a very good tennis player who won Wimbledon for the first time.
There's a big but coming.
I just don't think he's the most inspirational. You know, he trades off the fact he's quite a dour speaker. He's not very uplifting.
I think that's the thing.
I can just think of so many other people that might be better in this role.
It's his dourness that makes him so British.
Well, that is true.
That's what inspires
me. Or Scottish if he's losing.
He's successful and British, or Scottish if he's losing.
That's what's inspiring, Jack and Jenny. Thank you both for taking us through the papers. Good to see you. Now, why? Tiger Woods hasn't ruled out making a comeback at this year's Masters tournament. Stay tuned for more.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress. I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes. This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Omdurman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
They call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand,
Wow.
here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
You tell us who you're looking for. Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal? Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
He was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'll take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Time now to update you on all the very latest sports news.
Michael, do you want to give us a clap to all the cameras?
He's spuggy to his mates, the latest teen sensation off West Ham's endless conveyor belt of football talent.
I got in the first team and I got in the England squad. Everything was rosy.
He always was an intelligent footballer.
West Ham United Football Club.
They're taking the calls at Upton Park. Now West Ham are preparing to sell their most talented midfielder.
We knew that financial pressure, Michael was definitely going.
Once Tottenham was involved, there's only one team that I wanted to come to.
Jack Santini was the manager. I don't think he really knew who I was.
How did Santini react when you'd signed Michael Carrick?
Yeah, he was not very happy.
It's funny, in sliding doors, a career could have gone down a whole different path.
Martin, he saw the quality of him. I have to play this guy. He was my conductor.
I was so happy at Tottenham.
Now bids come in, his future's uncertain.
And there was a bit of interest. You get whispers and this and that.
I approached Daniel. We'd like to buy Michael. He clearly at that point said he's not for sale.
Daniel was pretty stubborn.
He was a great negotiator.
There's a myth around Daniel, perhaps it's warranted.
Thinking that they're going to go and sign someone else. Every $1 million, $2 million after that was quite a lot.
Did you ever think about walking away?
No, I don't think so. I think the very fact that Alex wanted him, I was confident.
He said, I want between 10 and 12, and ended up getting 18. That was Daniel, and fair play to him.
Play to the middle, please.
I just wanted to come and improve my game and win trophies.
There was resistance from the fans. Why was signing Michael Carrick?
If we hadn't been happy with the sum, we wouldn't have paid it.
Too much, if I'm honest, at that time. It was
Got his shirt number?
16, number 16.
There was no way I was replacing Roy Keane. Totally different characters, players.
There is only one Roy Keane, so don't try to find him.
That didn't bother me one bit.
One of the most important and best midfielders we've had.
I feel just totally privileged. Dreams, really.
He's spuggy to his mates, the latest teen sensation of West Ham's endless conveyor belt of football talent.
I've had sort of a lot of taste of the bench this year, so to get a start at home was fantastic for me.
Carrick! Michael Carrick comes up trumps.
At the end of the day, it's just a game of football. That's the way I look at it, you know, whether it's for the under-19s, the reserves, for the first team, you know, it's still 11 against 11.
When I was 13 or 14, I went to about 10, 12, 14 clubs around the country for trials and loved West Ham, just settled at West Ham.
He was a young lad that used to come down during the school holidays from the northeast. Newcastle didn't want him. He was in that area but wasn't on their radar. Suddenly I see him go from 5 foot to 6'2". He really did shoot up. He always was an intelligent footballer. He knew the game, could pass for the ball. I loaned him to Swindon, and I remember getting a phone call of his Johnny Frankham, the jockey. He rang me and said, I've just seen the best player I've seen in years at Swindon since Glenn Hoddle played. Your kid Carrick obviously brought him back into the fold at West Ham.
Time for a look at the weather now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, the next few days look cold but fine for many, although the south will see rain and hill snow tomorrow. Northern and eastern Britain will have a mainly dry and frosty start, while Ireland, Northern Ireland and southwest Britain will be windy with some patchy, mostly light rain and hill snow. Ireland, Northern Ireland and southern Britain will be largely overcast through the morning, with patchy, mostly light rain and hill snow becoming heavier and more persistent in the west.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, that was the wrap. Thank you for watching. All the top stories coming up right here on Sky News. Do stay with us.